my freedom, I'll keep my guns. Try to keep my money and my religion too.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by, Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
I'm gonna keep my big BA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need, we know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Charlotte King. Hello, Charlotte. How are you?
Good morning, Clay. I'm fine, thank you.
All right, dear. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I've got your website listed. If anybody clicks under your name, then go right to your website. You predict earthquakes, and I would imagine that you're probably pretty busy here, and because the Ring of Fire is acting up, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. It's been much more active, I think, in the last couple of years. The last 5 years, but especially the last 2 years, I feel that it's increased activity. The larger quakes are more commonplace now. It used to be that 5s were unusual, then 6s were uncommon, and then 6s were unusual, but 7s were almost unheard of, and now we're having 8s. And it seems like they're just, exponentially getting larger and larger. There's been an awful lot of large quakes lately.
Yes, ma'am, there has, and you predict these. You tell me that this isn't anything psychic or woo-woo, that you actually can feel these quakes coming in different areas of your body. Is that right?
Yes. What the doctors and scientists who have tested me believe that is happening is I'm picking up changes in the Earth's magnetic field that transpire prior to any seismic or volcanic event somewhere in the world. And I have learned over time with the 13 different sounds that I hear and the myriad of symptoms that I experience, how to identify the general location in all cases and the specific location in many cases where the quake is going to take place based on the part of my body that is responding.
Now, what areas of these areas of your body that responds, how have you learned what that means? What does that mean?
Well, over time, Clay, what I did when I first began knowing something was happening, which was in 1976. Excuse me. I made my first actual prediction in 1979. And from that point on, I took a calendar with the squares in it that you can write in, and every time I had an unusual or a same type of symptom, I would write it down. Then I'd watch for 3 days, approximately 72 hours, and see where the activity took place. And if it happened 3 or 4 or more times in a row, that same symptom versus the same location, then it would be logged as an official symptom. And what I found out is that not only am I able to do this, thousands upon thousands and hundreds of thousands of people probably around the world feel these things and they don't know what they're experiencing. but everyone will have the same symptom at the same time in the same place in their body, no matter where they live, because we're kind of all wired the same.
Now, there's also the information that's come out here. All right, let me see here if I got, what did I miss here? All right, let me see if I can bring this this channel up here. May not be able to. No, I wasn't able to. Anyway, so other people out there are experiencing these symptoms, these pains in their own body, and they're sensitive to these earthquakes too. I've always heard that birds and animals knew they were sensitive, but
right.
people
well,
too.
I think most people are sensitive to some degree. But as I said, you might just think that you're having a day that you're extra clumsy, or you don't know why your ribs hurt on one side or the other. You may have pulled a muscle doing something, or you might have reached too high, and that's why your shoulder blades hurt. But that's not necessarily true. You may be picking up various parts of the earth and the seismic activity that's building in that location. The animals, yes, they definitely pick it up. I watch my cats. I have 5 cats. And they're very sensitive. There are some areas that cats are ultra sensitive to. And then I also watch the ants. And most people kill ants. I don't. I try not to, unless I absolutely have to. Sometimes I'll have 10,000 of them, I think, in here. But they, like before the Japanese quake in 2011, what happened is I had so many ants everywhere. I mean, they were just thousands of them. And the day before the quake, they were all on the ceiling. And I thought, uh-oh, this is not a good thing. And I had already put out my alert for Japan. And so I got ready to go to work the next morning, went out, opened the garage door, and the sidewalk and around my garage was just covered in earthworms. And I thought, this is not good. So I went to work, and where at the time I was working, there were 4 steps and then a landing going into the building, and the earthworms had made it all the way up the 4 steps and were laying all over the landing. And so as soon as I got to my desk, I put out an immediate alert and, heads up, because something definitely was not good. If the earthworms had made that 4 concrete steps out of the ground, they really were not comfortable on the ground. And if they weren't comfortable, then we were going to have a problem somewhere. And so it's just a matter of observation and awareness. And, of course, for me, I hear them, or hear the sounds, the changes in the sounds. Most people don't hear the sounds. There are those that do. Most of them that do hear a higher frequency. They'll call it a whistle or a screech or a tone of some sort, like wires. But for me, what I hear is continuous foghorns, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I hear 13 different foghorn variations. And when they did testing on me, one of the places they did the testing, they ascertained that my hearing was down to 2 to 7 hertz and below, whereas most people only hear at 25 to 32 hertz for the voice level. And so I'm hearing subsonic sound all the time.
Now, somebody on the one of my chat rooms says in the right before the big Indonesian quake,
Yes.
while humans were going to the beach to see why the water was receding, elephants were heading for the hills.
That's it. Elephants are extremely sensitive, and they give off a very low frequency sound amongst themselves that people can't hear. And here in Oregon, in Salem, where I live, up in Portland, the night that St. Helens erupted in May of 1980, the elephants tore their showers down and broke their chains free. And they had no idea what had caused it, but I knew it was from the eruption of the volcano. They were picking it up.
Now, the news seems to indicate that volcanoes are becoming more frequent. Do you have a feeling for these volcanoes, for these explosions?
Yes, I do. As I said, St. Helens kind of woke me up to that in 1980. I began picking it up about 3 months before they had any earthquake activity up there on the mountain. Since then, many volcanoes affect me. The Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted in 91. I called them in the Philippines to talk to them. I gave them a warning, and I was only 7 minutes off on that. I was 12 minutes off on St. Helens. Galangang in Indonesia was one that made me violently ill. They had to sedate me for 3 days. I was so sick. And,
which one was that one? Which quake was that?
Galangang in Indonesia.
Okay.
In 1980.
Now you
And
say, I'm sorry.
Didn't know what it was at the time.
Now you say you've been studied by scientists, by doctors. What are their conclusions? What do they think? What do they think is happening here?
First of all, they did all the basic tests. They did CT scan to make sure I didn't have a tumor. They did all kinds of other tests on my body. They did blood work. They did everything. They, at the State School for the Deaf here in Oregon, they did testing on me, and they thought I had subjective tinnitus because I could hear sound when they said there was no sound to be heard. But when they tested me in the attenuation booth at the school, when they turned out all the sound and the lights and the speakers and everything, my sound was so loud it was almost driving me out of there, and that's why they thought I had tinnitus. But then when a scientist by the name of Rick Tell from Las Vegas came to my home, and he did testing at that particular booth, he found the sound was real and was 32 times higher than most capabilities of hearing people able to hear. And that he also said that the sound was, with most people would be under 100 hertz, but some people would hear it down below 10, and he felt that I was one of those people. And so they ascertained that that's what I'm hearing, is 2 to 7 hertz and below. And as I said, you can't even record that sound. That's below the threshold of recording it. They can record it with a spectrum analyzer, but you can't record it acoustically.
Now,
and then I was tested in the hyperbaric decompression chambers in Seattle, and that was an experience that I don't really want to go through again. They shut the doors in the chamber, and they almost burst my eardrums. They didn't even have to seal it. And but I could hear the sound in there, and they said that they felt that my hearing was rather acute because the tender who was inside with in the chamber with me, with earphones on, listening to the person outside, he would ask questions randomly from opening a book, and I could answer the question before the tender could give it to me because I could hear them outside the booth, and the booth was 1/2 inch thick steel. And so they thought that was rather interesting. The anechoic chambers at Sacramento State was interesting because it's a room that's echo-free. It's used to test fire signals and various other things. And it's a nylon suspension room that's all suspended on parachute cables. And it's got huge 8-crate walls and doors on it, 2 different doors going in to seal it. And you could have someone standing next to you and not hear where they're coming from. There's no echo. And they closed everything off and had me stand in there. And again, the sound acted very, very strong because it acted as a high bypass filter. It blocked out all the high frequency, but the low frequency was able to come through because we really have no shielding known that can block that low frequency. And I kept hearing this clicking on and off and on and off, and I said, it sounds like a rheostat of some sort, a relay. Well, 2 or 3 days after the testing, they notified me that they found that there was a furnace that was clicking on and off 2 buildings away, and that's what I was picking up on.
no.
And then the last place they tested me was in the United States Bureau of Standards Magnetic Testing Labs in Boulder, Colorado. And they didn't think my hearing was anything special, but they did notice that I have a delayed reaction to sound. instead of, let's say, one person picks it up every nanosecond, I pick it up every 2 nanoseconds. So I'm having an overlap, and that might be one reason that I hear it all the time. The other thing we noticed was after it was, the testing was finished, we were talking, and all of a sudden I grabbed my head, and they said, what's the matter? And I said, St. Helens has gone into harmonic tremors, and they said, how do you know that? And I said, I just felt it. And they looked at me and kind of shook their heads and smiled at each other, you know. And so I said, well, pick up the phone and call them. So I got my phone book out and gave them the number, and they called, and they asked, and they said, no, nothing was happening. And I said, give me the phone. And I talked to the girl, and I said, put me through to the main desk, and they did. And I said, have them check the seismograph and see what's happening. And they came back on the phone. They said St. Helens had just gone into harmonic tremors. And I was over 1,000 miles away. And I felt it instantly. And that's because the magnetic fields move at the speed of light, and there's no stopping anything from distance. It doesn't really make a difference where it's at.
Now, there's a couple of things, a couple areas that I want to ask you about, and I don't know if this is in your realm of experience or even your ability to answer, but I made a film a few years back with Homeland Security. Homeland Security's first briefing. They briefed law enforcement at Sandia Labs in Albuquerque, and they talked about needing 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops in case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, an atomic blast, or an natural disaster of significant magnitude. They might need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. And the area that they targeted and that they were worried about was the New Madrid fault line. The source of the most powerful earthquake. And by the way, did you know that earthquake was predicted by Tecumseh?
No, I did not know that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's interesting.
He predicted it. He said all of the homes in one little town would fall down, and that would be a sign to the Indians. And every building in that town fell down.
Yes. I have no question in my mind about the accuracy of the report, because it's been around forever. People just, for the most part, the only unique thing that I do is I was able to put together what I was feeling and hearing, whereas most people had not been able to do that. Feeling it or hearing it, I don't think that's unique at all. But putting it together and actually putting together a list of symptoms and versus locations, that part I will say was unique, because it took me about 2.5 years to get the list going, and I'm still adding to it even today. Things all of a sudden will show up, and there's no precursor that I've used like that before, but then I find out there's an event, and that symptom goes away, and I think, oh, okay, that's what that was. And, you know, we're talking 32 years into the process. But the New Madrid is a definite concern of mine. I can feel that one very easily. I was actually lecturing to an emergency management group when the first time I experienced it, and I was standing there talking to them. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden I just started shaking, and my teeth started chattering, and my lower back felt like somebody had just hit me with a baseball bat, and I just sank into my chair, and I couldn't even talk. And they said, what is it? And I said, I don't know what it is, but I said, I can tell you it's going to happen within 12 hours. And a few hours later, they had that 5.7 on the New Madrid that was felt in 16 states. Now I recognize the symptom, and I know it instantly when there's going to be an event in that area. And I haven't missed them, so I know I'm right on that.
Now, the other area of concern in this country and the world is Yellowstone National Park.
Right.
That is reported to be a caldera
Yes, it's a massive caldera under the earth there. Yes, very, very large. And it too has its own symptom area, and it's very easy to identify.
Is that heating up? Are you feeling anything from that? I mean, supposedly if that goes on, this is bigger than Mount St. Helens. It's bigger than anything.
Oh yeah, it's there's been more activity there, but I'm not overly concerned about it. I'm not getting constant symptoms like once a week or once every 2 weeks or anything. No more really than usual. The Wasatch, which is Idaho, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, includes West Yellowstone, and except the difference on West Yellowstone is there's always a lot of stomach pain with the other symptoms, and I'm not getting that on a regular basis. That's one area at this point in time I'm not overly concerned about.
Now, up on the website, I've got you. You predicted the quake in New Zealand or Australia, Christchurch. Christchurch.
Yes.
And also Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, most likely Chile.
Mm-hmm. That was just a few days ago. I put up a report on Facebook, and because I lost my email list, and I had to put something out somewhere, and so on the 14th I put out a report and said, pay attention, Chile's going to do something, and I said it's within 12 to 72 hours usually, and I put down the symptoms, and I also added the other area of Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, and the Kermadec Islands, and New Zealand being north to south of New Zealand, island of New Zealand, as well as Christchurch. And late last night they had a 6.7 in Chile, followed by a 7.0 in Papua New Guinea. So both of those areas hit last night that I had predicted on the 14th.
How far ahead do these feelings occur?
Approximately 72 hours. Sometimes, like Mount St. Helens, I had 3 months. Japan, I had 5 days. Our local quake here, I had 5 days. I guess I have to say 90% of it is 12 to 72 hours, plus or minus 12 hours, except Washington State, which is 84 hours, plus or minus 12 hours. The larger the event, like if it's something that's building, like if, for instance, if it was West Yellowstone, I would expect to get minimum of a month, 2 months advance warning on that. Volcanoes cause a lot more symptoms and a lot deeper symptoms than just straight earthquakes do.
Volcanoes do? What?
Oh yeah, because they're deeper. It's more pressure, I guess is the word. Case in point, I went to lecture in California, and they wanted me to stay at Marietta Hot Springs. And I noticed I had a really bad headache, and it got worse and worse as I was going down there. And so we stopped at Marietta, where I was pre-registered, and I said, I can't stay here. I just can't do it. And I told them keep the deposit, and I went on down to Temecula, and I was okay once I got out of that area. What it was the hot springs were acting the same as a volcano. It was geothermic. And so consequently, it was just like being around an active volcano. And I told the doctors told me, they said, stay away from active volcanoes. You will either become a permanent basket case or you will be dead. So I tried to take notice of that, but I had no idea. It never even dawned on me that these hot springs would be the same as a volcano, but they would be because they're all geothermic, and they're all just like the geysers in California.
Have you ever been to Yellowstone?
Nope. No, I haven't. I mean, like I said, I went to
Probably
Colorado,
a good thing, yes. Probably a good thing.
I don't think I'd want to go there and be close to the proximity, as sensitive as I am.
So is what about the mountains? What about Mount Rainier? What about Mount Adams in that right along that line with
Mount Rainier I can feel very easily when it gets active. It has the same symptoms as St. Helens does, except that because it's Washington State, there's always a wave of vertigo that precedes the activity. Plus, there is also stomach pain associated with Mount Rainier. The Mount Adams, I don't worry too much about. The Mount Shasta, that one I don't like. It makes me very, very ill. For the most part, all the volcanoes make me sick. I mean, I could pick up Montserrat or Kilauea in Hawaii. It's really uncomfortable. It causes severe earaches and sharp heart pain. And Etna in Sicily causes right side head pain and ear pressure on the right side. Whereas St. Helens and the Cascades, they're all back ahead left side with left side ear involvement and vertigo. And heart. They're all different, but all the same as far as the volcanoes go. They're just different parts of the head that you feel them. Earthquakes, on the other hand, in the beginning part of the body, like if your right ankle, knee, or hip hurts for no reason, then it's usually Peru, Brazil, or Colombia. But if it's your left one, it's almost always Ecuador.
Now somebody's asking about the Mississippi River area. You know, Edgar Casey predicted...
That would be back in the New Madrid area again.
Yes, ma'am. And Edgar Casey predicted that there would be an inland sea where the Mississippi is right now, didn't he?
I think Edgar Casey did predict that. Yes, he did. And I read up most of Casey's work, and I don't question his validity. It's not happened yet, obviously, but I don't question his validity on that because he was pretty smart and he's been pretty accurate.
This attack, I believe there was an attack on the tower there at on the oil rig there in the Gulf. There was a laser beam punched into that, and they were talking about putting a nuclear bomb down there. I mean, the whole United States is honeycombed with gas deposits.
Right. That's true.
And if they said if there was a spark, what that could blow up half the country.
Well, if it hit the right chambers and the right gases were there, it could cause a great deal of devastation. That's for certain. I never really thought about it that way, but there's a lot of caverns and things there that are filled with various forms of gas, and I'm sure that or oil, and I'm sure that would definitely create a problem. One thing, Clay, that I found in the last over 20 years probably now, even before I had a computer, some earthquakes had a different signature, I guess I'll use that word. And not too many in the beginning, because there weren't too many of them. But we're talking the ones that were 6.5 to 7 or greater. And then later they became all the ones 7 or greater. And I can pick these up by a precursor that I am able to recognize. And I can't really describe the precursor, but I have found that there is no actual physical symptoms with these events, most of them.